The Prime Minister's everywhere today, mostly for all the wrong reasons. He sought to repair the damage of the recent indecisive response to the behaviour in the National Parliament. He is not responsible for the behaviour. He is responsible for fashioning an appropriate response. So far, there's been none. Are the parliamentary sitting hours going to change so that people can be with their families at night rather than getting drunk and abusing women? Just on that, by the way, not all men are drunks and not all men are rapists. But change the sitting hours. Secondly, drug and alcohol tests randomly, anyone who sets foot in the parliament. Why not? And properly vet those who work there. There are too many staff, too many backroom factional hacks who are allegedly advisors with no life experience themselves, except apparently a bender on Friday and Saturday nights. Yesterday, Scott Morrison called for the better treatment of women. He said he was committed to stopping women from being talked over by men, being overlooked and belittled, and he wanted women to have the same opportunities and the same voice as men. Prime Minister, what do you think Christine Holgate was thinking when she heard those remarks? The former CEO of Australia Post was forced to resign because she was trying to change the culture of Australia Post. Prime Minister, you were talking yesterday about bullying. You stood in the Parliament without speaking to Christine Holgate and went ballistic. You demanded she stand aside. Her voice was silenced. She'd given 4 Australia Post executives a watch in recognition of the work that they'd done to secure the most important deal in Australia Post's history. At the end of last month, the same Australia Post announced a 6-month profit increase of 100%. Christine Holgate was the CEO for 4 of the 6 months up to December. Prime Minister, you demanded this woman stand aside while an inquiry was conducted into the Watch's affair. And if she didn't stand aside, you said, quote, she could go. Prime Minister, that's red hot stuff. What's this stuff about women needing to be heard and have the same say as a man? And what of the report? It completely cleared Christine Holgate. Is that why it was initially not released, but then released by the Morrison government on the Friday before the Australia Day long weekend? And the so-called investigation by the law firm Maddox found that, quote, there was no indication of dishonesty, fraud, corruption or intentional misuse of Australia Post funds by any individual involved, unquote. The shorthand version of the report is Holgate did not transgress any explicit board policy. Her purchase of the watches was approved by the responsible Australia Post executive. The purchases were known by the then chairman, and at no stage was any objection raised by anyone. But the Prime Minister gave Christine Holgate no voice at all, no right of reply. She was publicly humiliated by the Prime Minister of her country for spending $20,000 on watches. The Maddox report into Christine Holgate apparently cost $350,000. Now, one of the report was originally kept secret leading up to Christmas. It completely exonerated Christine Holgate. The remarks of the Prime Minister in Parliament were the consequence of not checking his facts. But the Prime Minister did not recant. He did not apologise. Quote, I was appalled. It's disgraceful. And it's not on. I'm so appalled and shocked by the behaviour by a chief executive. And quote, he laid it on. It made headlines. Ms Holgate was publicly excoriated. Yesterday, Mr Morrison called for better treatment of women to stop them being talked over by men, stop them from being overlooked. One of his front benchers, Karen Andrews, said, for all those women who've been treated poorly in a workplace and have been disrespected by men, I will speak up for you, unquote. The Prime Minister disrespected Christine Holgate with all the power and authority of a Prime Minister. Neither Karen Andrews nor the Prime Minister Morrison nor anyone in the government has spoken up for Christine Holgate, nor has there been an apology. At the time, Janet Albrechtson, a talented woman, talked about the Prime Minister playing low-rent populist politics. That was at work yesterday when Mr Morrison claimed News Corp was investigating a complaint against one of its journalists for harassing a woman in a female toilet. None of that happened. The Prime Minister was speaking untruths. Last night, he issued a grovelling apology of deep regret, quote, I was wrong to raise it. The emotion of the moment is no excuse, unquote. But supposing there had been a complaint, why would a woman legitimately complain if she knew the Prime Minister, in an emotional state, was about to tell the whole world about the complaint? The Labor frontbencher Katie Gallagher was right when she said, quote, Morrison urged women to come forward with complaints in one breath and then in the same press conference revealed details of a complaint, using it as a defensive strategy against his own failings, unquote. The issue here goes to truth. Social media have labelled Mr Morrison with the sobriquet Scotty from cover-ups, which simply means the public can't be fooled. There's supposed to be an inquiry by the departmental head, his departmental head, Gaetjens, who was formerly Morrison's chief of staff when he was treasurer, into which people on Mr Morrison's personal staff spoke to Brittany Higgins. That shouldn't be hard to find out. But Gaetjens told a Senate estimates hearing the review had been paused on the advice of the Federal Police Commissioner. But the Federal Police Commissioner told the same Senate estimates that he'd not asked Gaetjens to suspend, alter or slow down the internal inquiry. Is that a cover-up? Wherein lies the truth? You might remember during the bushfires last year, nothing wrong with Scott Morrison having a holiday, but he instructed his office not to tell journalists he was in Hawaii. Was that a cover-up? The Prime Minister wants to be seen as the architect of the coronavirus response. He told us we'd be first in the queue to receive vaccines and that 4 million Australians would be vaccinated by March. That's 16%. It's now mid-March and barely 1% have been vaccinated. Now we have the Parliament, that's the Senate and the House of Representatives, voting overwhelmingly for a royal commission into veteran suicide. The Prime Minister couldn't bring himself to speak in the debate, let alone honour the resolution of the Parliament. So we still have no royal commission. But he said yesterday he wanted better treatment for women. Quote, I want women to have at least the same opportunities, the same voice and the same safety as men in this country. Prime Minister, the wives of vets are beyond despair. Your defence leaders have sacked their husbands without the most minimal access to our system of justice. The wives have asked to be heard on behalf of their destroyed husbands. Your defence top brass sacked them with untested evidence, their jobs, their dignity, their emotional well-being destroyed. You've called the untested allegations brutal truths. Yesterday, Prime Minister, you talked about getting the House in order. But on vets, you are ignoring the resolutions of the same House. On Christine Holgate, you're violating the very principles that you want us to accept that you believe in. I've said many times in recent weeks, the Prime Minister's office is overflowing with staff. He is listening to the wrong people. If the sobriquet Scotty from cover-ups or Scotty Master of Deflection take hold, then the Prime Minister's walking a very fine line. He could well become the Kevin Rudd of the Liberal Party. 1 month, stratospheric ratings, the next, sinking like a stone. What are your thoughts? Email me, alan@skynews.com.au and the text line 0414 000 848.